One of the most empowering things that I've done is to make no my default. That may sound like a negative thing, and like, no. It's actually makes me into a kinder, more giving, more positive person. And this has not come easy, okay? This is like really hard to make no your default if you are a people pleaser, approval seeker, daddy issue, survivor of blah, whatever, narcissist, childhood essay, blah, 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 right? If you are, and a woman under patriarchy, if you were raised as a woman under patriarchy, it's most likely that your default is yes to people, except for yourself. I'm going to give you a couple examples of like big wins for me lately. And because it seems so dumb, but it just, to me, was like a yardstick of my healing, because my default is actually to pause and say, do I actually want to do this? Because I have never done that. I have never done that. That doesn't mean that I haven't been an incredibly selfish person. I absolutely have been selfish. But I think I had to just start looking at things differently, because what I realized is that as like a codependent person, and all this is a trauma response, right? I mean, we weren't just raised to be like this as humans, but if you came from abuse, or if you're a woman who doesn't want to die, right? And who needs men to like you so that you have access to resources and all the things, right? Like, none of us are doing this for fun, okay? We're doing this because we were taught this way. We're doing this for survival, but it's a maladaptive thing. Like in childhood, you just have to just go along with stuff, right? So if you were raised to center your dad or whatever, whoever, because a lot of times this is like the relationship with our mothers, and then we carry it out over to all relationships, especially with anyone with power, which is men, right? So I'm not just saying that, like, lots of women are like, but my mom did this. I get it. But I have seen so many women with serious mother issues have terrible romantic relationships with men because it's a power thing. It's like, it doesn't have to be a man who taught you this, right? But if you date men, this is going to come out in your relationships, but especially with these people that we are taught are like the prize, when we're really the prize. They're the gold diggers, we're the prize, blah, right? So I've told you all how one of the things that Anthony realized pretty quickly as a way to support me in my healing is to remind me on a regular basis, especially when he can tell that I'm not doing this, is to just be like, wait, center yourself, babe. What do you want? What do you want? What do you need? How do you feel? Don't think about me for a second. Don't think about them, right? Because he sees me do this with other people. He sees me do this with family, with friends, with and again, the like, what do they want is a lot of times not even what they want. This is what I assume they want. This is what I assume they're making demands of me to do. And a lot of times it's not even true. I'm literally making a monster out of somebody who never asked for this stuff, right? Because I can spin stories and project people from my past onto innocent bystanders all the time, right? And so I'm very fortunate he doesn't have to do this as much anymore. We're really not that much at all, because it's finally starting to become the default. And I had 4 or 5 instances this week where I was like, I went into the like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing, or I guess this is what I have to do. And then I was like, wait a second, I don't want to do this. And I was like, oh my God, yes! It is such a victory, but it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of pausing, taking deep breaths, checking in with yourself, which I am not. That's not my default, is to actually be in my body, especially as a survivor of childhood essay. I will literally want to be anywhere but from here down. I live here, baby, or up there on the ceiling looking down, but I'm not in my body. So if I'm not in my body, I don't even know what my gut feels, right? Especially when my nervous system is like, right? Like I am just in like all kinds of stuff, but I'm not actually sitting in my body, breathing in my body. And that's why any kind of like somatic, I don't know all these terms. I'm not an expert in this. All I know is that I did a lot of healing that involved trying to understand this. Cognitive behavior, thinking about this, understanding why, and that, not saying that that is not important. That stuff is important, but a lot of that is very expensive. What I have found is there's a lot of resources that are free online and stuff. You got to be very careful who you listen to, right? But I follow people on TikTok. I follow people on YouTube. Like I vet my resources. But I just need to learn how to be in my body, because I don't even know if I want to do something or not, because I don't even check in. What do you want? What do you need? Because it's just like, oh my God, la, 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 right? They're going to be mad, and they're going to think I'm a bad wife, bad daughter, bad sister, bad friend, bad blah, 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 bad content creator, or whatever the hell I am. Everything, and this is what chronic codependency looks like, even though I don't know any woman who isn't codependent on some level, because you have to be under patriarchy. What does he want? What does he do? Got to thermometer up the butt of everyone around me, but especially men and their moods and their shame and all those things that dictate how I then feel and behave and walk through the world, right? Again, this is all like, there's a reason why we do this stuff. And instead of being like, God, Melanie, why are you so blah? That doesn't really help. I don't need any more voices in my head being like, you suck. Instead, I'm like, oh, this makes sense why I react this way. Sorry, right? Sometimes I even laugh at it because it's really funny, the stuff that my brain comes up with, which actually I believe that this kind of like I think this is one reason why I'm so creative. Like, because instead of that energy going to be like, what do they think? I use that energy towards creating art instead of creating stories that make me terrified of everybody, right? So I'm just throwing that in there because a lot of people like are so annoyed and so frustrated with all of their trauma and all of their stories and all their social conditioning under patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism culture, that they're like, God, but... and one way that I adapted to that, or one of the skills that I got out of it, I'm not like grateful for it, but I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take anything good out of this, is that it made me really creative. My mind is, I spin the craziest stories. Luckily, there's stories about my own life and stories for art instead of literally stories to torture me, because I'm so obsessed with what are they thinking? Oh, I bet that person thinks that I'm ugly. I bet that person is criticizing me right now. I bet that person blah, blah, blah. Or I bet what is he doing? Like, oh my God, if I could get the time back. If I could get the time back of all that creative energy that went into thinking about men and why he's not texting me. Well, maybe he's blah. No, I bet he's, I mean, it's amazing the stuff my brain comes up with. So women could be like, so much of this energy, if it could be harnessed, instead of literally years of my life worrying about what people think of my body. So I'm throwing up, I'm almost dying from an ED. All that energy, time. But whatever, I get it. And so one of the things that I have, despite the therapy and some EMDR and just some of those things, one of the most valuable things that I have been taught is how to just sit with it. I can talk about my feelings all day. I can tell stories about getting raped and stalked and almost driven over a cliff, and I can do all that and not even feel anything, right? But now that I'm in touch with my body, I'm actually physically react to those stories after I'm done telling them. So this stuff does take a toll on me. I do pay a price for it because I'm connected to my body and reading the comments and hearing y'all's stories. So I wish I could just go back to being like cold, dead heart sometimes, because I feel too much and I cry a lot. I didn't really know how to cry until my 30s. That's how cut off I was. I will do anything to avoid crying. And then it feels so good to cry. Crying is so healing. But I was like, no, I'm not going to cry. I was a toxically masculine feminist. Was around too many toxically masculine men for a long time. And I was a cool girl. Too cool to cry. You can't get to me. I hate me more than you can ever hate me. Take that. So crying, feeling, breathing into my gut, that is where it started. Because then I can actually ask that question. What do I want? actually take the time to pause and say, what do I want? How do I feel about this? Then I can say no. The more I can say no about dumb stuff, the more confidence I get in saying no to big things I really need to be saying no to. It is so empowering to say no. It is so, so empowering to say no. And especially if you're a survivor of like childhood SA, where even your body and your autonomy, your consent, were like you were taught from an early age that that's not even yours. This is a very hard one lesson. It feels uncomfortable. Like one of my old mentors, 70-something-year-old woman in Brooklyn, and I've talked about her before. She's the one who created the Sam voice for the little dictator in my head, which that dictator is an ironic protector. So even that dictator voice that's like, you suck. Even that voice, I know it's trying to protect me. Right? So I don't need to hate myself anymore for having that Sam voice or whatever it is. I got a lot of voices. I got so many voices, y'all. I'm pretty sure everybody does, but I don't know, whatever. But like, I don't need to hate myself for a voice that I didn't put there, right? I'm just like, okay, thank you. But this is what we're going to do. Oh, look who's joined us. Look at you. Look, he's laying on his little paw. So my whole life, I operated by that voice of like, you should, you suck, la, la, la. And then because that voice is so loud and it went to Harvard Law and has the best arguments for everything, and my intuition's just this little whisper that's like constant, but it's a whisper. You can't even hear it when Sam or the voices are like, rah, right? Like this is what it's like in my head all the time, okay? Really hard to hear the whisper when you got that going on, right? You know what helps quiet that should voice? Taking deep breaths, breathing into my gut, and then just asking myself before I say, yes, okay, is, I don't know. My other mentors, when I was living in, I've had a lot of mentors, thank God. I would not be this way if I didn't have so many people who have poured into me, which is one reason why I do this. I want to share this stuff. But she said, every time from now on someone asks you to do something, like this was like a homework assignment. If you can remember to do it, say, let me think about it. Let me think about it. Wow, that changed my life. And then I realized that other people do it all the time. When like the next day, I asked my boss if I could have this day off for like a trip. And he goes, let me think about it. And I was like, oh my God, wow. Okay, other people have been doing this for a while. I just never noticed it. I didn't even realize that was an option for me. Let me think about it. That buys me some time to check in. I almost never decide something when I'm asked on the spot. When I was freelancing in the film industry, and anytime like the film people would call me for a job, I would let it go to voicemail. Because I didn't know how to say no, and I didn't know how to negotiate my rates. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. So I let it go to voicemail, listen to what they're proposing, think about it, and then I call them back or text them. Because scared, codependent, people-pleasing Melanie is always the one who answers the phone for some reason. But when I get a moment to get clarity, so like letting it go to voicemail is my way of saying, let me think about it. Right? Now in the film industry, you have to jump on it right away. So I had like 5 minutes to think about it at tops. But it just gave me that level of protection from myself. Because here's the thing, when I say yes to things that I really should say no to, everyone suffers. Like some people benefit from it, absolutely, especially men. Men absolutely benefit from this, especially the exploitative, predatory men. But I am resentful. I'm pissed at them for even asking me instead of acknowledging that I said yes when I could have said no. But when you don't even realize you can say no, you're like, you of course you're going to get pissed. And I say this because now that I know I watch other people going through this journey of like learning how to say no, because when you say yes, it means something. Right? But learning people say, I've been on the receiving end of people who don't know how to say no or don't realize that they can say no. And it feels awful when someone hates you for them agreeing to something that they should have said no to, that you didn't realize they should have said no to. I'm not saying that some people ask on purpose because they know you're the person who never says no. Of course, so much nuance to this conversation. But one of the things, and I talked about this in the Harper's Bazaar, Men Have No Friends, Women Bear the Burden piece. There was one of the women in there who was exploited so much And she said that she was the go-to girl at work, at home, right? But she ended in her 40s, she started to realize that every person in her life across gender exploited her because they knew she'd say yes. They're always going to go to the person who's the yes man or the yes woman or the yes person. So she was starting to become real bitter because everyone expected her to say yes. But on some level, she painted herself into that corner. And here's the other thing. Being the go-to girl or the go-to person, it feels good. We wouldn't do it if it all sucked, right? I loved being a martyr. I didn't love being victimized, but I loved being a victim, right? Because being a victim meant I didn't have to take any responsibility or change anything. This is not to shame victims, okay? I'm just saying that when I was a victim of that man, that abuser, I felt morally superior to him. I knew he was a terrible person and I'm the good person, right? I got to blame him for doing all this stuff to me when I know that I know that there's so much nuance to this, and I had the hormones being, cortisol, trauma bonds, having been groomed in this whole thing, trauma responses, like all stuff is happening, right? That I don't even know is happening. It made it so hard to leave. To actually leave, actually ask for the help from my friends who were ready to help me. Thank God. To actually take the action was like moving a mountain, especially after you've been, demoralized every day and you're so weak. And he had me smoking weed every night. So I was like foggy and I was sleep deprived. There's all these things happening, which is why this is so dangerous, y'all. They literally beat you down so that when you do finally have enough, you don't have the energy to take action, and it keeps you in the cycle of victimhood. And then there's finances and children and all those things. Okay, I know all that. I talk about this a lot. This is not what this is about. Like, that relationship with that man was the biggest eye-opening experience of me. And it was my bottom with codependency, and I almost died. And that's when I was like, holy crap, I need a new way to deal with relationships, not just romantic, literally all of them, because I'm getting screwed all the time. But no, a lot of these people like aren't trying to do this. Even, like standing up to my mom, standing up to like people who love me, but like me I turn into like a little girl. Anthony's seen it. When he went back to the US and met my family, when we did our little tour, he literally said, you turned into a 12-year-old right in front of my eyes. I was like, who is this person? Right? And so I have to do a lot of work when I'm around, people from my past to not go back to like old, like people pleasing little girl Melanie, right? It's hard work, y'all. It's really hard work, but it has changed the dynamic with my mom, so we're actually closer now, right? It's changed the dynamic with lots of people in my life. And it started with being like, let me think about it. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. I just used to be like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. Oh, okay, you want me to come home at this time? Even though like I have all these conflicts and it doesn't work for me, but okay. And then I'm mad, right? So giving myself that moment of pause. Let me think about it. That was the start. So if you're new at all this, that's the start. That's the starting place. Let me think about it. Tattoo it. No, don't tattoo it. But write it on your hand, like whatever it is. Put it on a notification on your phone is let me think about it. Because women, we are just conditioned, especially if you're super codependent, to pour and pour and pour and abandon yourself constantly. And then you get very mad at the world, but a lot of times unfairly mad at people who are not trying to exploit you, because everyone ends up exploiting you because you're exploiting yourself because you don't even realize you can say no. And I know sometimes people can't say no. Okay, every time I make these videos, like, please know that I understand there's a lot of nuance here. Okay, this is like a short video. I could write a whole book on this. I still go into a freeze response, a fawn response in so many situations, and it's so humiliating. I still have setbacks. I still have them, right? And then I'm like, wait a second. I remember being on a subway once in my early 30s, and the man across from me was like, run off. And all the women around me got up and left. And I sat there because I don't want him to feel bad about what he's doing. God forbid a man feel his shame. And my way of saying no was finally being like, wait, I can get up and walk away. And I did. And I was like, oh, wow, that feels empowering. Like in my 30s, y'all, Now, still fawn or freeze. I only say this because I want you to know that I'm still doing it imperfectly. And this stuff is deep and it is so hard to unlearn. So again, I am still responding sometimes in a way where I'm just frozen and I am like angry. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I've abandoned myself. What am I supposed to do right now? Oh, I'm supposed to say, excuse me, you know what I mean? Like, just sometimes it's so simple. And I'm like, wow. Other times it's getting up and literally changing seats, right? Sometimes it's as small as if you're making plans with someone and they, again, this is like someone I trust, someone I love, someone I have a really healthy relationship with, and you want to go out to dinner and they suggest something that you hate. Now, instead of being like, okay, I'm like, well, I actually don't really like that kind of food. How about this or this or this? And they're like, oh yeah, perfect. Like, this is so deep that it literally never occurs to me that I'm allowed to have an opinion or like counter with another thing, right? But let's play this through. If I go to, and this again, this seems like it's a dumb example, but I'm telling you, this would sabotaging my relationships. If someone's like, let's go here, and I'm like, okay, even though I'm like, God, I hate that. Now I'm going to spend this money I didn't want to spend. I'm going to eat this food I don't want. Who do you think is going to pay the price other than me? Do you think that I'm going to be sitting there maybe giving off some passive aggressive vibes? I might be acting weird at dinner. I'm sitting and I'm like, and then maybe I'm like, when the bill comes and I'm paying 20, 30 euros for this food I don't even like. Do you don't think that person's going to feel that? Right? So my sister called me out on this a lot because she saw it and she was like, what? Something's wrong. Like, she called me out on me just like thinking that I can't hide. I mean, I'm like an Oscar level actress sometimes, right? But sometimes I'm terrible at hiding it. And she'd be like, clearly you are upset about something, but you won't tell me what it is. And will you please just tell me what it is? And I'm like, oh, right. I guess this is pretty confusing. And I'm like, well, I really didn't like that thing. And she's like, okay, let's do this other thing. And I'm like, oh, wow, that was easy. I'm telling y'all, the learning curve is different for everybody, but I am like, I am so grateful that I've had so many loving, patient people in my life. Liz, my sister, Annie, so many of the people that I've talked about. Anthony has taught me so much about advocating for myself because he can tell immediately. He's a very intuitive man. And he's like, I mean, you say you like this, but do you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, see, that's not that hard. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That was more in the beginning. Now I'm like, I am shocked at how direct I am. It doesn't mean I'm never passive aggressive, but I am shocked at how honest and direct and confident I am when having conversations with him, which then like spills out into other areas of my life, right? It started with my friends. I learned how to do it with my friends, and then Anthony, and then some other people. And at work, now I advocate. You know, I learned how to negotiate rates because someone would be like, here, do you want this crappy rate? Even though your work is so much more valuable. And I'm like, okay. And now I've been taught from mentors to be like, how about this? And they're like, okay. I'm like, wow, I literally just made twice as much, which is still probably not enough because I'm still like, lowball myself just by even offering something else, right? Like, I'm just like, negotiating has not been my strong suit or whatever. Don't ever have a people pleaser negotiate for you, right? But I'm so happy that I've had mentors in my life who just by example, I'm like, wow, look at that. Look at her saying no. Huh. I remember my friend Annie, the one who saved me in New Mexico. Her and I went on vacation together one time, and some guy wanted to hook up with her, and she was like, nah, only if you go down on me first. And he was like, oh, I don't do that. And she's like, okay, well, we're not going to hook up then. And he's like, okay. And they like played music, and he braided her hair, and it was like really random. And I was like, wow, what do you mean you negotiated? She was like, I'm not going to sleep with this man if I get nothing out of it. And I need that in order to guarantee I'm going to get off, especially with someone that I'm like not dating. So I presented my terms and he did not accept them. So we didn't do it. And I was like, how do you do? And then I became that woman. I'm in writing. You go down on, are you going to eat this? No? Okay. Bye. Good luck. Block. I mean, I wasn't that ruthless, but pretty much. In writing. Do you do this? Are you going to do this? Because this is what I need. And if they said, yeah, of course. And I'm like, okay. Now we continue on with this conversation to make sure that you're not a psycho. And so this week it was really interesting. There's a couple times where someone kept wanting me to go, ride bikes when I was, in Amsterdam. And I was like, I don't want to because I know I got Renaults. My hands are going to freeze. I want to spend time with Liz. This is the only time I have with her. I've ridden bikes in Amsterdam before. Like, I've already had that experience. I have a bike. I ride a bike here all the time. Like, I don't need that experience. But I almost did it because he was really excited to ride bikes. And I finally was like, why would I be doing this? And I was like, it's not because, well, it's not because I want to. Oh, it's to make him happy. So I was like, no. I know that sounds silly to some people, but it was such a big win for me. And then just yesterday, I think it was, or sometime this weekend, I met up with some, it's really hard to make friends, right? Like as an adult in France, it's really hard to make friends because the friendships are from childhood. And so it's really hard to like penetrate circles of friends, right? I hate that sounded weird, penetrate. And so I saw someone post in the immigrant expat group, French woman just moved here, new to town. I was like, oh, that one. She doesn't have childhood friends. So I met up with her and some other people. Very proud of myself. Still putting myself out there all the time, right? Making friends takes a lot of effort and it never ends. It never ends. So I met up with them, had a cool conversation, but had like a friend, my really close friend, Michael, who I've talked about a lot on here. We were supposed to go and catch up and have a coffee and, spend some time together because it's been a while. And so when it's time for me to go, he came in and they're like, well, he can join us. And part of me was like, I started getting all anxious, like, okay, how can I make this work? I mean, and I was like, wait, I don't want to do that. So finally, and I was so proud of myself for like not roping him into this thing that I didn't want to do, he didn't want to do, but it was just because they thought it'd be cool. And they're not being like, do it. No one's putting pressure on me. That's the thing. I'm putting pressure on me. I want to make everybody happy. And when you make everybody happy, you screw over everybody, right? You can't make everyone happy. It's not possible, right? You're going to disappoint people. You're going to, but that's okay. They'll survive. I just used to think that people are just going to be crushed if I said no. Guess what? They're adults. They'll be fine. And if they're not fine because I can't go to this one thing for very valid reasons, then maybe I need to reassess this relationship, right? I mean, it was so funny because as soon as we left, Michael, I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself. You didn't want to hang out and I didn't want, it was a very crowded cafe. Again, I've had like sensory issues lately, like too many people, perfume, noise, like stuff like that. Like it overwhelms me quickly. And I was kind of like, I didn't want to ruin my alone time with him because he's like one of my best friends, right? And I was like, I'm so proud of myself. He was like, I'm so proud of you too. That was so great. You were just like, no, it wasn't, you're like, I'm sorry, but we already had plans. Boom. No hard feelings. God, but the amount of turmoil that I went through, like, oh my God, what do I do here? What do I do here? And I just remember thinking, if I make this man sit here with people he doesn't know, and he may be uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. I don't even want to be doing this. And why am I doing this? Because I don't want them to be mad at me. I literally just met these people. Like, I don't owe them anything. And they're not even asking me to owe them anything. This is all up here. Right? I don't know. This video may not make any sense to some people who this comes naturally to, but I'm telling you, one of the most empowering things in terms of fighting against patriarchy, right? And to fight against that urge to be a victim, which as a white woman, if I'm in that victim mentality, I'm a very dangerous person because I still have a lot of power. And that's where we get Karens. If I'm constantly doing stuff against like that I don't want to be doing, I'm eventually going to get frustrated and it's probably going to come out on somebody. And that somebody could be someone that I have power over. And I'm a very dangerous person in that scenario. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine. But the history of the United States and in the South, I don't know, like I know my ancestors and I know that what white women have done historically in the United States. If you're not from the United States, then I don't know what your history is. But this, what I believe, the more that I can stay true to who I am, what I want, what I need, what true to my own sense of values and moral code instead of just going along with stuff, the less dangerous of a person I'm going to be, the happier I'm going to be, the more authentic I'm going to be, and the more closer I will be to feeling love for myself and for the people I really care about. And it starts with learning how to say no.